Okay, this is
Hi.
a little bit of a change of pace. It's me and Malik, and Eden is here.
Hello.
First time on the channel in a little while, but we're all here because we all saw and loved Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I did the scripted review, and now we're just gonna gush about spoilery things that I couldn't talk about there.
I literally have a list, like still
Yep,
list of like 40 things.
we both just composed.
From the huge to the minute.
Yeah, Eden just composed a list for a Tumblr post she did, which is just all of the things in this movie.
And it got about 2,000 notes, so apparently everybody agrees with me.
Yeah, I don't know. So people already know my thoughts probably because they assumingly watched the scripted video. So you guys, whoever wants to go first, just general thoughts.
Go ahead, Eden.
Okay, it was amazing. I don't know how to.
Spectacular.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to word the fact that I have never seen a movie like this before in like more ways than one. Like I've never seen a movie animated in the way this is. I've never seen a movie with like characters that resemble the ones of this movie. Of like, it's. I don't even know how to like properly word it in a way that wouldn't just be repeating your scripted review. Other than, like, I've seen this movie twice. I saw it once with you, and then again yesterday with you and another friend of mine. And like the amount of which my enjoyment has like increased, and it was already pretty huge from first watch to second watch. It's just, I love it. I love it. I don't know how to be more general than that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and okay, I don't remember what you said about it leaving the theater, because I asked if you preferred it to Infinity War or Black Panther, because that's a big question that's going around. And I don't know, have you like come down on that yet? Because I think I have, and I'll get that.
Once again would need to rewatch Infinity War.
Which I have done recently.
I just did that earlier today.
I feel like, you see, like they're both coming out of the theater the first time. I remember specifically saying, "There's so much movie in this movie."
Yeah.
And I said the same exact thing about Infinity War. Like, there's just so much packed into both of them that like. There are definitely aspects that I could say I like better in this movie than I do in Infinity War, but overall I could never like put them side by side because they're so huge and different.
Yeah, I feel like they're very different in a lot of ways and very similar in a lot of ways. But before I get into that, Malik, just
I definitely tie it with
Black
Panther.
Okay, Malik, just general thoughts.
General thoughts. Okay. The movie that I've seen the most times in the theater this year is Infinity War. I have seen that movie 8 times.
What?
I saw Black Panther like 3 times in a theater and then like 4 times afterward, but okay, that's a lot.
I could see this movie every day for the rest of the month. It's that good. I don't. Infinity War and this film are so radically different that I don't even feel right comparing them. I will say that my best theatrical experience by far, like of all time, is still Infinity War. Like, there is nothing that can recreate that moment and the atmosphere and just the fans that I was around when I saw Infinity War in the theater for the first time. So many crowd-pleasing moments. That was just... You could just feel the love and the passion and the hurt and the tears. Like, you could feel everything coming out of Infinity War for the first time. And you have that a lot with this, not to the same degree, but there were definitely a lot of people that still had a very powerful reaction to this movie, which is saying a lot because most adults these days look at animated films as just something that they are dragged by their kids to see, or just something to take their kids to, and they could really care less about what they're watching. But adults love this movie just as much as kids did, and I think that speaks to how strong the character were, great the story is, how mesmerizing and just beautiful the animation in general is. And yeah, this is something that has never been done before. This is a unique style of animation that they kind of came up with through trial and error in developing this movie, to make it feel like a living and breathing comic book, and more so than any other film that's ever come out. I think this is the one that's done the best job at achieving that, at feeling like you're literally watching a living and breathing comic book. There's stuff they do with paneling and onomatopoeia. It really got me in a place. I love this movie through and through. I think this is a great introduction to Miles as a character. Spider-Verse, that's a concept I don't inherently like. I read that arc written by Dan Slott like once, and I just remember not liking it and being kind of worried about it, that they were going to do that with this movie. And I was absolutely blown away. I was floored by it. I thought they did the best job with that premise that they possibly could. It's still very much Miles' movie. And Peter serves as a co-protagonist, which I also love, and we'll get into that. But just overall, it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, I have a friend who's still yet to see this movie, who was kind of worried about it not being enough of Miles' movie. And coming out of it for the first time, I was like, dude, you were going to be so happy. It's totally still his film.
Yeah, this is his. No one really steals the spotlight from him. They have their moments, and they're all great moments. I love pretty much all the other additions that they had. Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, Gwen.
Spider-Gwen, played by Nicolas Cage.
Oh, he was absolutely hysterical. He had some of the best jokes in the whole movie.
That's my brain matches down to my hands to feel something, anything at all.
He's looking right at us as we talk about it.
Yeah, and someone pointed out, like you saw in the Twitter post, there's a very blink and you miss it scene of him without his mask on when he's going over the origin story, and you see that he is still the same character model. The same character model as the other two Peters, and that's great. But his hair is black, and it's like, of course. So oh man,
I don't know how I want to transition here or make points, or if I just want to.
I had something.
Flip out the list.
I think okay. So like, you mentioned, Malik, just the premise of Spider-Verse, and I think a lot of people had reservations about that. Not just is that like too out there of a concept to do as a movie, but also just there's the kind of reservation you have of like, okay, Miles Morales being Spider-Man, all right, fine. He's a legacy character. We've kind of been conditioned to accept those. But this story that's like just a bunch of different Spider-Men all coexisting, and you worry about, like, does that make Peter Parker less special? And Mother's Basement in his video brought that up briefly, and it's like, I don't know, on the one hand, you kind of have that fear of like, okay, is the things that makes Peter Parker a cool, compelling character, unique superhero going to be diluted because, oh, there's so many other characters like him in this universe? But seeing the way that they execute it and the theme of like, because Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes of all time, one of the most popular fictional characters of all time. If you're going to do anyone
pre-MCU, he probably was the singular most. I mean,
definitely the singular most popular Marvel character.
Marvel character, probably the second or third most popular hero.
It's Batman and Superman and Spider-Man,
and then Spider-Man.
Those are the three. Yep.
If you're gonna pick a superhero to do the message of sort of like anyone can inhabit this character, anyone can be this kind of hero, then he's sort of the perfect choice. It's like if this were like into the Iron Man verse with like a bunch of different Iron Mans, I don't think it would have the same impact and it would feel kind of cheap.
Oh no, because and Stan Lee talked about this, rest his soul. Um, the interesting thing that he did with Spider-Man, he didn't even think of this until much later, like well after he'd already finished his run, is that with Spider-Man when he's in costume, when he's wearing the mask, anyone can picture themselves in the costume doing what he does. He is the everyman that everyone can relate to.
And even like outside, I think was it Stan? I believe it was Stan, but somebody had stated that like yeah, it was Stan. Had stated that like the reason Spider-Man starts wearing a mask is because he doesn't want like people to see he's scared. Because he starts at 16. That's like a very he invented Stan invented him with like the idea in mind that he was going to be relatable even outside of the mask. So it's like he's in an interview and he's like, sure, he can have superhuman powers and he can like swing around Manhattan from skyscrapers, but he's still got girl problems.
He's got an ingrown toenail.
He's got acne. His aunt won't let him stay out as long as he'd like.
Yeah.
So like even with just like regular white guy Spider-Man, he's supposed to be
the most relatable possible.
Yeah.
And so sort of like the extrapolation of that is like, okay, if we're going to relate to everyone, then let's let like anyone feel like they can inhabit this character. And I don't know, it's like you say that in like broad strokes and it's kind of a very simple sort of message and idea, but in execution in this movie it's really powerful. And like I think a lot of that is just because you mentioned how it all the steps we go to make sure that Miles remains the focus. And I love that all across Twitter and like social media and stuff, all of the people who worked on this movie are being very open with like the creative process and talking about behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, the script is already out, right?
Yeah, the script is out. The Daniel Pemberton talks a lot about what he did to make certain things in the score, and Phil Lord talks a lot about what he did in the screenplay, and he mentions that they went out of their way. And I mentioned this in a review as maybe possibly the source of one of my negatives, like my only negative in like action scenes. We are so laser focused on Miles' point of view with the camera that when the other spider people are in a fight scene, we don't get as much cool stuff with them because we're so like in Miles' head, like visually. And that's a very deliberate choice on Phil Lord's part. He's like, we made sure that the camera was with Miles whenever possible.
That I don't fully agree with. I think a lot of that is more towards the beginning of the movie, especially when, like, Miles meets his universe's Spider-Man for the first time and he's fighting Green Goblin. That whole sequence, well, at least on a first viewing, it's a little hard to follow what was going on. That's not so much the case now that I've rewatched it a couple times, but throughout most of that scene, you're getting like the broad strokes of what he's doing with Green Goblin, but for the most part, that's a very like hectic kind of scatterbrained scene because Miles is just trying to get out of the way of the action and not get hurt or hit or caught in the middle.
Yeah,
so you're not really getting that scene as a traditional action scene. It's more of like a horror scene where he's kind of just trying to avoid two titans clashing.
Yeah, I mean, the first real legit action scene of the movie is the fight with Doc Ock, and we'll talk about her later. But yeah, it's a long time in this action movie before we get like a legit fight sequence. And
it doesn't feel like that though, because the entire movie is so streamlined. Like,
and we will also talk about the pacing later, like probably sooner. But the pacing is something that is impeccably done across this movie. And I didn't necessarily feel like the Green Goblin fight was visually disorienting at all, or like hard to follow. I think it's just like you're seeing snippets and you're seeing what you need to see. But yeah, for the most part, throughout the whole movie, like with the exception of when we cut away to like Kingpin, or when we cut away to whatever we need to see just so that we can understand like plot details. We're like 100% with Miles all the time.
Yeah, that's true. I do appreciate that. Like this isn't wholly comic book Miles, and yet it still feels so true to him and like his Brooklyn upbringing and background.
Yeah, most people I've heard, I think like, everyone finds this Miles more interesting than comic book Miles.
This Miles is by far the character I have related to probably most in anything ever, and I say that with no exaggeration.
Like just out of fictional
Out of
characters.
fictional characters, I say that with 0% exaggeration. He might be like the most relatable to me that I have ever seen in anything.
Right, yeah.
That's interesting.
And like I mentioned, because I put in the review that I found him like he's not exactly a one-to-one version of myself, but there's a lot about him that's like,
he might be a one-to-one version of me.
There's a lot about Miles in this movie that's like, oh, this is me like 5 or 6 years ago. And some of that is like family stuff, some of that is like school situations. But
now it's definitely me.
Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know. This is a very relatable version of Miles, and I say that as someone who's kind of had difficulty getting into his character in other incarnations. And it's like, I don't know, they did a really good job. It's like Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and everyone else who worked on this script, and even Daniel Pemberton in the music, they all have like such a clear vision of who this character is. And a lot of the movie rests on that, I think.
So what do you think of Miles' first incarnation with Bendis?
I don't know about it, so.
I don't dislike him. I think I like the sort of subtle ways that they make him different from Peter, especially in costume. He's a little less confident. He's got a very different sense of humor. And then you've got like the way that he would pop up in cartoons. I actually haven't seen him in the new, the currently airing Spider-Man cartoon. I know he's in there, but that cartoon turned me off like a lot, so I haven't watched more than a couple episodes. And then he's in the PS4 game, and I think he's great in that game. But again, if I compare him with the version in this movie, this one seems a little bit more dynamic. He seems like, I feel, and this is just me like on the spot because I haven't actually thought about this comparison, trying to put into words what I think the difference is. I think the difference is with the PS4 game, it lies a little bit more heavily on Miles as Spider-Man fanboy. Whereas here, you definitely get the sense that he's a Spider-Man fan in this movie, but he's got a few more things going on. And part of that is also that both of his parents are alive, so we get to see him interact with them more. And I don't know, there's a little bit more to this Miles, I think.
I don't get that he's... Well, actually, he might be a Spider-Man fan. He doesn't really talk about Spider-Man all that much pre-meeting him. There's just that scene with his dad earlier in the car.
That makes sense.
Where he's like, with great accountability comes great accountability, and it's like, that's not even how the saying goes, Dad.
Yeah, it's like, with great ability comes great accountability. It's like, yeah, but I don't know, like, part of this, and again, this is also into using Miles very smartly, I think, to sort of voice the audience, because, again, tying into, is this premise too out there for audiences? Like, a lot of people, most movie-going audiences aren't even aware of Miles Morales. They aren't aware of any Spider-Man outside of Peter Parker. And so I found it very smart and kind of, like, out of the scene where he goes into his room after he's been sort of sticking to the walls and stuff a lot. And it's very quick, but Gank's comic falls on him. He takes it and he's like, wait a minute, what? And it's just the way the line read goes of, there can't be two Spider-Man. Like, what does he say? It's exactly...
There can't be two Spider-Man.
It's like two Spider-Man. There can't be two Spider-Man. Can there? It's like, I feel like that's how a lot of the audience watching the movie is going to feel. where we deliberately open up the movie. The very first scene is Peter Parker. He's going over his whole origin, and he's like, "There's only one Spider-Man, and you're looking at him." And then we cut to Miles, and I can't help but wonder, like, people who maybe didn't pay close attention to the marketing or don't know who Miles is, are like sitting through this movie going like, "Wait a minute, why are we following this kid for like 20 minutes in this Spider-Man movie?" And so they're sort of like in his headspace of like, there's one Spider-Man, and it's Peter Parker, and this kid doesn't really belong in that story, and yet it becomes his story. I don't know, I feel like I just went over like 4 different points without like necessarily tying them together, but there's a lot to talk about in this movie.
There is a crazy amount to talk about in this movie. Yeah, I really like Shameik Moore. I think he gives Miles a really endearing warmth and charm.
So good. He's so good.
And he believably sounds like someone going through puberty.
Like someone going through puberty.
Yeah, he's great.
And, he's
and
like,
that puberty joke is hilarious.
Just go see me. Yeah, so Shameik Moore is amazing, and a lot of the, like, there's really, like, no part of Miles' character, I think, just execution, I guess you could say, in this movie that doesn't totally work. Like, his vocal performance, the character design, I'd even say, the fact that, I don't know if you, like, kept up with, like, what's been being sort of like revealed by the behind the scenes stuff on Twitter, but Daniel Pemberton mentioned that Miles's musical theme throughout the movie is like part of the instrumentation is the sound of his spray can, like what he does the graffiti art with.
That's so cool.
And it's like that element of his character, the fact that he wants to be an artist, and we incorporate that into the coloration of his suit. Like at the end, he sprays the color onto the Spidey suit and makes it his own. And even like the very end of the movie, it's the spraying of that logo. It's like there's not a single detail about this kid that isn't like enhancing and enhanced by everything else and all the other aspects of this movie. And I guess that just brings me to like where I'm gonna do the top superhero movies list. Whether or not this changes, because I will probably watch Infinity War again and Black Panther again prior to doing that list, right now, as of this recording, I think I'm gonna give it to this movie over those two. And it's just because outside of the couple of problems that I gave with it regarding like some of the other cast members, they like on just looking at it as a machine, like every single element of it is working in so much tandem. Like it's an almost perfect screenplay, I think.
I want to get my only complaint with the movie out of the way before we go any further. That's okay?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
There's one scene towards the end with Penny Parker that's supposed to be emotional and dramatic, but it doesn't play at all.
Yeah.
Because Scorpion messes up her exosuit, and we get in her origin that she has a psychic connection with the spider that lives in the robot.
Right.
But the spider's fine. She can make another suit. What is she crying about?
Which makes me wonder if okay, so she's supposed to be like 11 or 12 years old. So maybe it's just like she put a lot of work into this suit, or not like the robot, she's attached to the robot. It's weird. I think, and this is me like giving the movie a lot because I think the movie needs to convey this better.
It really does.
But
it doesn't play at all without more explanation.
Yeah, potentially, I think maybe we're meant to see her as viewing the spider and the robot as two different entities. And I don't think the movie makes that clear at all, but I can maybe, if I really wanted to stretch hard, read that into it. Because she says, like, the spider that lives inside the robot, the fact that she doesn't, like, conflate the two of them, maybe she thinks of them as, like, two different things. but that's not like clear at all.
That is not clear at all. And I can't just give the movie that. As much as I adore this movie, I'm not just going to give it something that's not at all implied.
Yeah, like any problems that I might have are all.
Apologies. I am back.
Yeah, it's just don't.
What did I miss?
We're talking about the end with specifically like a problem that we both have is the Penny's reaction to the Spider-Bot getting destroyed, and it's like,
I would say that is
but the spider inside is fine. So
because
why?
it's built by her dad. It's the last minute that she has of her father.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Okay.
She says her dad builds the robot, and then later she says,
Right.
she says, for me, when they're talking about people they've lost,
Her
said
father's
for me it was her
dead.
dad. So it was a remnant of her dad that she lost.
Well, never mind then. Just okay.
Did I fix the problem?
Yes, for me at least. Forget I said.
Well, that's true. I guess I don't have a single problem with this movie.
I have a single problem, and this is just a matter of opinion. I know it's supposed to be exaggerated, but Fisk's shoulders bother me. That's my only problem. I can't.
Yeah, okay. I feel like I maybe asked you this in the Facebook group, but I forget how you came down on it. How did you feel about the Fisk's character design?
Oh, me and you argue with David about that. I don't have a problem with it at all. I actually like it a lot. It's very striking. It makes him look even more menacing. Like I said, you could easily make fun of that as like, oh, he's huge and he's got a tiny head. But I think it really works.
I have specific problems in like two shots. It's like the one where he's talking to Dr. Octopus, and like you see him from side profile, and he's like an upside down parabola. And then when Miles is looking through the vent and you can't actually see his head because his shoulders are just that huge.
Actually,
those are the two like ones that bother me. But otherwise, it has that effect.
I really like that second one you mentioned, and I agree with Malik. I think because the thing about having him be so ridiculously huge is that, like, in that scene when Miles is like getting into Alchemax and he looks down and he sees Tombstone and Fisk walking side by side. Even though Fisk is like significantly smaller within the shot, he still feels like he's totally dominating that frame just because of how big he is compared to Tombstone, who is a normal-sized person and is also in that shot. Like, the thing is...
And Miles saw him murder his universe's Peter Parker with his bare hands, and he's still scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like... I don't agree with the idea that this Fisk is like sort of a flattish character. Like I can see some people purely on the script level going like there could be a few more meat on his bones or whatever. I think he's a great villain, but I think so much of that is also he totally dominates every frame he's in. It's like we keep doing these shots where the camera will sort of be on him and it'll almost just be a black screen and his face, because it's not like it's a close-up, he's just that big, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. I love his voice, and I love his click pen.
I love the voice, yes, Lee Schreiber is great. It would never have occurred to me, like watching trailers for the first time, I'm like, oh, we're doing Fisk with like a straight-up accent. Never would have occurred to me, but it's great.
Yeah, this guy feels more like a New York mobster than the more like sophisticated version that we've seen in the Netflix shows and in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like either Vincent D'Onofrio or if you grew up with the 90s Spider-Man cartoon Tony J, and so you just hear Judge Claude Frollo whenever he talks. But yeah, like compare that with this, it's like, ooh. And it's because the thing about that kind of accent is that, like, handled poorly, it could make him seem a little less threatening.
And make him seem like a 20s villain.
Yeah, and yet it never does.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Especially since the very first thing he says before he's even on screen is him, like, doing a silly little Spider-Man theme song. It's like, oh no, it's still like, oh no, I know who this is. This is not good. This is a problem.
I love the you're gonna love this hell freaking light show.
Yeah, it's a hell of a freaking light show. You're gonna love this.
I want to talk about Chris Pine's Peter Parker, Miles's Peter
Who I
Parker.
didn't know was Chris Pine until after the movie.
Yeah, because I didn't realize until the movie was over that was Chris Pine, and so when I took Eden to see it, I stressed, like, I made sure that Eden had no clue Chris Pine was in this film.
Because I'm in love with him.
I stressed, like, Eden, we're going to see Into the Spider-Verse with Peter Parker voiced by Jake Johnson. I repeat, the character of Peter Parker is voiced by new girl actor Jake Johnson.
That's exactly how he phrased it, word for word.
Because going into the movie for the first time, I just assumed that he would be voicing both versions of the character. And so I hear Chris Pine's version, I'm like, you know what, that doesn't sound like him, but it almost sounds like it could be the same person. And it was so strange, and so it was like a weird moment for me.
I knew that Chris Pine would be in the movie. I didn't know he would be voicing Miles's Peter Parker. But I figured that out literally right before he died. Like, as he was talking to Miles, I'm like, that's Chris Pine.
The voice sounded familiar, but it sounds enough like Jake Johnson.
Yeah, that's the moment when he most sounds like himself, I think, is when Miles finds him in the rubble, and he's like, you gotta hide your face. Everyone is in his pocket. If you let him do this, everyone will die. Everyone.
I knew that immediately wasn't Jake Johnson. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, you have a completely different voice actor here. But I didn't put together that it was Chris Pine until after the collider had already, like, blown up and collapsed, and Peter's half dead and talking to Miles.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there's a little boy.
Yeah. Okay. So I know, Malik, you did this Facebook post where, like, you're like, I don't like little kids being in theaters, and for the most part, I agree with you. But
This movie,
when Eden and I saw this together, there was a kid sitting next to us who was like having such an emotional roller coaster with this movie, and I was like into it. And it's like his dad is there, and like the fight with Goblin like legitimately freaks him out, and so he's going like, I'm scared. It says like, Miles is gonna be okay. See, Spider-Man's got him. Spider-Man's gonna save the day. And knowing what happens, I want to tell this guy, no, you are setting your kid up for some serious trauma. And so it's like, everything's gonna be fine. Spider-Man's got it, and then he dies.
and then you turn to him. Was it after Spider-Man died, or maybe it was Prowler going after him?
It was like late in the movie.
Where he's like, the little boy goes, Daddy, I'm scared. And Nick turned to him and he goes, well, you know, Spider-Man's scared too. And my heart.
I don't know. Sometimes noisy kids in theaters is weirdly a pro to my viewing experience.
Like my friend, which really hit me in the heart, in the feels. My friend who does not go to movies at all, her little cousin, she's Dominican, and her little cousin went with their aunt to go see it, and he's like 3 or 4. He's like 4 tops, and he turned to his mom and he went, Mommy, Spider-Man looks like me. And I'm like, my heart.
Wow. That's actually pretty great.
Yeah, and it's like, and also I saw this with my dad, and my dad was like shocked that they killed Peter Parker off in one of these movies. And it's like, ah, man, I envy so many people who are going into this like relatively blind, even as far as just like the marketing for this, because I think we can put together from the marketing that like, okay, when a Peter Parker who's not Jake Johnson's Peter shows up and isn't in most of the trailers, you can kind of piece together, okay, he's not going to last long. But someone who's seeing the movie who isn't thinking on that level, it's like there's so much of like twists and turns in this movie where it's like, this is just such a good screenplay. It's so good.
And even someone who's like read the comics and like knows the source material, like I know Miles as Peter Parker is going to die. That's not what made. Well, that is part of what made it impactful, but that wasn't like surprising because I knew it was going to happen. What really made it impactful though is like, I don't know, maybe this sounds kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? This might sound kind of meaningless coming from like the world's biggest Spider-Man fan, but like they made me care about this Peter Parker in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like genuinely
like,
care about this guy in 5 minutes.
Just the original trilogy, so it even keeps the emo. It even keeps the emo dance, which is my favorite thing.
What's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The voice clip. They used the voice clip for Uncle Ben from Spider-Man 1.
Oh yeah.
Cliff Robertson. It's Cliff Robertson, right?
Yeah. Other little things I love about this movie, like how frigging the comics are kind of low-key nonfiction, but if you look closely, Miles's comics, they say Billy because they can't just assume his name is Peter Parker.
Right.
Because they don't know his secret identity.
Did you notice the Billy in the comics?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when Miles is looking through, when he's about to jump off the building and he's looking through the comics in that alleyway, he's seeing that the Peter's secret identity, Spider-Man's secret identity in those comics, which are like the biographies. His name is Billy, and so it's like, of course, like they can't call him Peter Parker, otherwise you'd be going like, how is Peter's identity in these published comics and no one knows who Spider-Man is?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like that's really smart, and there's just tons of little details.
There's so many little details.
Like, blink and you miss it. Like
when
Steph Curry is a golfer.
Steph Curry is a golfer. Clone High has a movie in this universe.
Shaun of the Dead has a sequel.
Friggin' Spider, when he goes when he dies, the last little message he has on his screen is friggin' Ashiteruyo, which is the freaking Japanese word for I love you. And
you know that. And also, the Yugo is incredibly successful in Miles' universe.
Coca Soda.
The Yugo, by the way, being a car from Yugoslavia that really exists and is apparently like super terrible and like died out a decade ago. There's just so many little details of like
Spider-Man speaks Spanish.
Okay, so
I freaked out at that because I knew Miles Morales was Afro-Latino, but like the fact that they put it in and they had him speak with his mom, who is Puerto Rican and played by a Puerto Rican actress.
And with no subtitles.
And the fact that he responds to Scorpion in Spanish was my favorite part.
Okay, so we've kind of skirted around this a little bit, so unless there's anything that you want to hit first, Malik, before we talk about her, I say let's talk about Dr. Olivia Octavius.
And how there's still no pictures of her online.
Well, I still want to talk about like classic Peter that we get for most of the movie.
Okay, alternate Peter. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, alternate Peter. He's so damn good. I love Jake Johnson in his role. I haven't watched a ton of New Girl, maybe like 6 or 7 disparate episodes. So I wasn't too familiar with him. But again, just like Yuri Lowenthal this year, I thought he's another great addition to people who have voiced Spider-Man.
Yeah. I didn't, again, with the marketing, I didn't even really think about it as like, could this end up becoming one of my favorite Peter Parkers? Because I was just thinking of him in terms of, okay, he's going to be Miles' mentor figure. And that's going to be his role in this movie, and it's going to be cool, and he's going to be funny and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I really like Peter Parker as a character, and this is a really good take on that character.
And like I'm reading the current Amazing Spider-Man comics now, and like we finally have like traditional like him and Mary Jane like back together.
Thank you, sir.
But it's so cool that we finally have like another film where they're together again. Well, not together really, but like he has like this. He yearns to like get that relationship back, and like they got divorced, and like that's eating away at him, and he's kind of sort of like accepted that it didn't work out and is trying to let that go, which is why he volunteers to stay back and is okay with dying.
It's like That scene toward the end, it's like he's got a legit death wish.
He's legitimately suicidal because of his, like, how messed up his life is.
Yeah, like they're very subtle with that, but it's
And like that is that scene at the end. I haven't cried that hard since really since I saw Infinity War, to be honest with you. Like that scene at the very end where Miles does that same move against Peter and trips him and grabs him by the shirt and tells him that you gotta go home. Like, and then he lets go of his shirt and Peter falls and tells him, "Not bad, kid." That was such a great moment.
Yeah, it's like, I mess it up, and it's like, how do I know I'm not gonna mess it up again? It's like, you won't. It's like, yeah, it's a leap of faith. It's like just all of the goodbyes, like that whole goodbye sequence. It's like
even
2 minutes long in total, from Penny leaving to Noir leaving to Ham leaving to Gwen leaving, and then Peter. And it's like
Miles's face when Spider-Ham gives him the mallet. By the way,
it'll fit in your pocket. Great.
Yeah, and it's like just the score throughout that scene, and like Gwen lets like they're friends, and she's like, friends, like, see you around, Spider-Man, and it cuts to his face. It's just it's so great, that whole
and him taking Noir taking the Rubik's Cube.
Maybe one of you can answer this. I have a question now that we're talking about Gwen. Why is she the only one that gets knocked into next week before Miles gets his powers and everyone else?
The best explanation I've heard of it is time is relative.
We don't know for sure that she is, though, because we have no clue when.
Yeah, we do. She says she's knocked into last week.
No,
I'm
but
saying
when Noir and Ham and Penny show up.
What I was gonna say is we have no clue when Spider-Noir or Spider-Ham or Penny show up.
Oh, so you're saying all of them could have been knocked into last week?
Yeah, or like a couple of days. Yeah. Who knows?
We only know that Peter B shows up fairly recently, but yeah.
But why would there be any significant time gap between him and everyone else who showed up?
Because didn't they say it's like a rip in the space-time continuum?
Yeah,
or
they
something?
did say it's the time.
I assume that they all just kind of showed up at random times.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's not really a problem. It's just a question I had.
Yeah, that's kind of what I took from it. Ouch.
I do really like her though. And Miles and Gwen and Spider-Gwen, getting together is a thing that's obviously they did in the comics. And we know that they're going to actually be a thing for the sequel. But I think all the banter between them like really worked. The the whole like awkward hair and puberty thing though, like him getting his fingers stuck to her hair and then her having to like get her head shaved because of him.
Well, yeah, I like that she panics specifically when he says he's gonna pull as hard as he can, because she probably realizes that he doesn't know he has super strength yet and will like break her neck.
Oh no, she realizes that he has spider powers.
No, yeah, I'm saying she probably knows that he doesn't know it.
Yeah, and you can tell that she's like trying to tell him like, just calm down, because she knows like you need to like be calm to unstick to things. But Miles is just freaking out.
Yeah, and I feel like having looked at that dialogue like a lot, and knowing how they've chosen to kind of do like the spider sense, you can just kind of tell by looking at a person thing. I think she puts it together like as soon as they start talking.
Well, yeah, because the sense immediately.
Yeah, like I think as soon as she asks him why he's sweating so much, I think she knows. Just kind of about the way.
I love the aesthetic of Gwen's world too, and like her movement and everything. They really captured the ballerina aspect to her with like the whole costume and everything.
And by the way, I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah, I noticed that on the posters. I will say
the ballerina shoes.
Yeah. I will say though, I don't know if I could watch a whole movie in Gwen's universe just because of the sort of like the little the almost blurry aspect to it. Like you notice that there are like little lines coming off of people that indicate it's almost like a blurry sort of camera.
Mm.
It's like that could really start to hurt my eyes after a while.
I love Spider Noir because he drinks egg creams and punches Nazis.
Like a lot.
Like a lot.
I did really enjoy the reinventions that they did for Miles too, like his dad being a cop.
Mom
When,
being a nurse.
like when Bendis, did his run, Miles's dad was not an ex-con, I think, but he was like a legit criminal who worked with Uncle Aaron. But like kind of just decided to stop one day, and that was kind of it. He didn't become a police officer. But in this, he's a police officer, and Uncle Aaron, he finds out that Miles is the new Spider-Man fairly early on in the Bendis run, and is like actually like really manipulative and like is like legit trying to use Miles for his own ends, and doesn't really have the love and affection for his son. Oh, for his nephew.
Yeah.
That he does here. I thought that was all really interesting and really cool, and I couldn't really call anything when that was going to happen because it was enough of a reinvention that wasn't really super predictable in that regard. And I thought they did a wonderful job making the Prowler a great villain. Like that theme that Daniel gives him is freaking amazing.
You know what I didn't notice the first time? Okay, so that like elephant sound / horn sound that goes
It is
with
in fact an elephant.
It is in fact an elephant. It happens when he opens the window, so it sounds both like a window screeching open and the elephant noise, which I love.
I didn't notice that. Like the
That's
first time
amazing.
the first time we hear it is when he's chasing him for the first time after Peter just died.
But I'm talking about when he opens the window to get into the apartment.
No, the first time we hear it is when he's fighting Miles as Peter.
Oh, you're right. It's like, Prowler, are you mad at me? I think you're mad at me.
I love that Peter just stops the entire machine for even a second.
Yeah.
Because it's been 10 years and he like.
And he's just like, I'm so tired.
And then Peter B shows up to Aunt May and he's like, you look tired, Peter.
I am tired.
And they both go, that's a no-no when they get their masks taken off.
Yeah. And it's like...
that's another wonderfully emotional moment when the classic Peter shows up at Aunt May's house and he says, I'm not ready for this, because he buried his universe as Aunt May, and that universe as Aunt May just lost her Peter.
Yeah, then...
And she doesn't act like...
I mean, she does.
She does.
In that scene, but for the most part, she's coping with it pretty well. Like, kudos to her. She's keeping herself busy with all of these other spider people.
And
yeah, she really feels like ultimate Aunt May in that, like, once she finds out Peter's identity, she's able to take it all in stride.
Yeah, as far as we don't know when she found out. She's known for like a long time, it seems.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also, like, you made a point earlier about MJ, like, this is the first movie in a while where, like, Mary Jane has been the love interest or has even popped up, because, like, you know, there's Michelle in the MCU, but she's a different thing. And so it's like the last time MJ, like, proper was in a Spider-Man movie was over a decade ago, and that feels weird to think about.
And that relationship was not handled very well. It was actually handled really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll still give it the first movie. I think the first movie handled it decently. But yeah.
I'm talking about specifically Spider-Man 3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Me and a good friend of mine, about a month or so ago, did like an unofficial commentary where, like, we didn't record it, but like we just kind of sat and dissected that movie as we watched it.
I was talking to somebody about how what is it? John Jonah Jameson?
Yeah,
the son, John Jameson would have been way better to be Venom than just introducing Eddie, because he's physically huger and like more imposing. He has the motivation because MJ literally left him at the altar for Peter, and he's an astronaut, so he could just go find the symbiote. So I don't understand why not make him Venom.
Well, because Eddie is Venom in the comics, and
I know, but it's more fitting. It just
I get the feeling that maybe Raimi just didn't want to put that much thought into it because he wasn't interested in doing Venom.
Yeah, he didn't want to do Venom.
Yeah, he didn't like Venom in the first place. And I do feel like, I don't know, you're kind of... I mean, I get in like his original appearance in the 90s, like Eddie himself was a big guy and so Venom was big. But, I don't know, that feels kind of like quibbling over semantics. You could easily make him just have a bigger muscle mass when he gets taken over by the symbiote.
I just like
Although I will say this,
Spider-Man.
Jonah's son in Spider-Man 2, that actor, is the most wasted thing in that movie.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely.
I know neither of you probably watched the originals, but he's amazing in that show.
Yeah. I think I know about that one. But yeah, okay, so not to get too sidetracked from this Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Because Venom does exist in this universe according to the Spidey Bells song. So I'm interested to see what that's like. But for the villains that we have, Fisk is great. Tombstone is really the only guy who's kind of wasted. Like, they got a guy with a really cool voice, and he only has, like, one line. Scorpion is weird and awesome, and I don't think... Is there another Scorpion like that that's got the whole, like, cyborg thing going on?
No, I like that green.
Well, I mean, he has a cybernetic tail in most other incarnations, but nah, he's not... He doesn't typically look like that.
But, the Green Goblin is huge for no reason. Like, how did that
No,
even
apparently
happen?
that is from something. I just don't remember what it is, but I did remember hearing that.
It's probably from Ultimate.
Yeah,
Ah,
Ultimate.
He's a monster in Ultimate, which I honestly preferred.
Yeah, I guess you could say that works better. But I don't know, I'm kind of attached to the guy in a suit thing. But also, the best one, the standout, it's Liv.
It's Liv!
I'm like, did you notice everyone's reading into the whole, like, my friends call me Liv?
And then Aunt May calls her Liv.
In this movie, so it's like, did those two characters have a history? It's like
I would assume so.
And they dated, she and Oz, like...
In the comics, they, like, were engaged for a little while.
Yeah.
And again, like, that old comics Aunt May hardly knows what's going on half the time. So.
She also dates, like, everything. Didn't she date like a scroll once or something?
She dated Jarvis. But yeah, like she's so fun, and Catherine Hahn is like amazing with the voice. Like because out of all of the incarnations of Dr. Octopus that we have, you never really think of them as sort of like when they're not doing business. She's got like this whole goofy lady scientist vibe. Like
when I first saw her, I thought Miss Frizzle?
Exactly.
Like that's the first thing that came to my head when they're watching the presentation at school.
Yeah, like you first see her doing presentations on like alternate universe theory at Miles' school. And that's like a great setup for like she's interested in that and is looking into ways to make that happen. And she's kind of got like this harmless vibe to her. And even once you find out who she is, she's got like this wannabe faux friendly affect to her that the other Dr. Octopuses tend not to have. Like they tend to be all business, and she's very much kind of like having fun. It's like, I really like this take on the character. She's great.
Very exciting scene.
I love the design and way that her like tentacles. I was gonna say, but yeah, because aren't they called tentacles because of the number of suction?
You are getting into semantics.
Sorry. Okay. But her tentacles, I love the design. I love the way they move. I like that they're like air powered ish because you can like see the air moving through them.
They are soft robotics.
Yeah, I love them, and I love when Miles is punching her with them. Miles is like invisibility is just amazing.
Now those,
Like as a power and also just the way it's used.
as a story device,
Yeah.
yes.
And also the electricity, which shows up less. But
it's
the
That whole sequence with them at that facility and in the forest, like turned out being one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
yes, agreed.
like that a scientist gets hit in the face with a bagel
And
and
it
it
says
says
bagel.
bagel.
It just says bagels, the onomatopoeia word. It's hysterical.
And I like Sony is notorious for like spoiling things in their marketing, which again I cannot emphasize enough. Someone decided that the very final scene of this movie was okay to use as marketing material because Sony, and yet someone very smartly was like, let's not put Olivia in any of the marketing at all because the chase in the forest is a clip that got released in the marketing and she's just not in it. And so it's kind of awkwardly edited, but it's like they went to painstaking measures to make sure that no one knew about this character before they saw the movie. And it's
Yeah, just like traditional Doc Ock in the Spider-Man PS4 game.
yeah, it's like before that game came out, I didn't even like know he was in it. And it said, but here it's because in the scene where you find out, I've seen this in 4 theaters. In all 4, there was like an audible gasp every time where it's like, who are you again? Oh, Dr. Olivia Octavius. Everyone knows instantly what that means. And it's like, oh, no.
Oh no!
It's like, the handling of her character is so brilliant. I want more. I want more of everything in this movie, but her especially.
Yeah, she's
I mean,
really,
yeah,
really
we don't
good.
see her actually. We don't know what happens. She just gets hit by the truck, so she's incapacitated. But whether or not she actually falls into the portal,
I'm just going to assume that she's arrested.
she's arrested.
Nick, you know how much I love Score.
Yes,
What?
the score.
Oh, the score. Okay, sorry, I misheard that. Yes, Sunflower.
I think he means like the
Well, that's soundtrack. The soundtrack is very, very good too. But yeah, I'm talking specifically the score.
So
Yeah, by Daniel Pemberton. It's like the scene that we were just talking about, the chase through the lab and in the forests. Like, I think that track is amazing. Like, there's no track by Pemberton that I don't think is amazing. Like, I've listened to the entire thing from beginning to end multiple times already. It's so good.
So have I. So have I, man.
And like the scene where we meet Penny and Spider Noir and Spider Ham for the first time, and like as each of them are talking, it has like a little leitmotif for each of them, and the instrumentation is different. It's like, how do they make these 3 completely different styles just coming like one after another sound so seamless?
and how did they like the animation on each character is literally a different style and still amazing. Like I especially love Penny's entrance. Just not only the introducing herself in Japanese,
Her
but
sitting on the robot, and it's like, what are you?
it's like, and then I love Spider.
I think you're just supposed to say SPDR.
SPDR, like mimicking her movements or like complimenting her movements like an actual anime mecha does.
He's got sunglasses on.
So freaking cool. Yeah. That score, I don't know, that score sounds so wholly unique.
I know. I don't have anything else that sounds like it.
There's nothing that sounds like this movie.
Absolutely nothing, no. That's what's amazing about it. There's nothing that sounds like this movie. There's nothing that looks like this movie. It is, like, in a world where, like, I feel like I have to keep defending comic book movies because everyone talks about how they're all so samey and like they all need to be vastly different from the next to justify their existence.
Mm-hmm.
This is completely and wholly different from anything we've got before.
Like I on Twitter, and I stand by this. I think that this movie is probably the best argument currently existing for superhero movies as high art, as just like a bunch of really talented people just took this superhero thing and made it into a complete passion project. And everyone working on this movie, you get the sense, was treating it like an art piece. And it totally comes through in every aspect of it.
And I do want to say, as a Spider-Man fan, I am not one of those people that has been vilifying Sony like for the longest time. Like I love Spider-Man. The first Spider-Man film is the reason why I'm a Spider-Man fan in the first place. I love Spider-Man 2. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but I love that second film. Spider-Man 3, not so much. I did really like Amazing Spider-Man. And again, Amazing Spider-Man 2, not so much, but there's plenty to like in that movie.
Yeah.
And
It's not like a god-awful, irredeemable, like garbage.
like people talk about Sony as if they've completely and utterly neutered the Spider-Man franchise. They haven't. They've taken one step forward and maybe 3 steps back, but like they've given us great Spider-Man on screen before. And with this movie though, it's like no, Sony definitely deserve, if they can put together a creative team like this and let them run wild, they deserve to keep the rights.
Yeah.
I'll say it. Sony deserves to keep the rights. After this movie, absolutely.
Yeah, like even like liking Raimi's Spider-Man 1 a lot, liking a lot about Spider-Man 2, and really liking the first Amazing film, and still having some good things to say about Spider-Man 3 and Amazing 2. I didn't know that they had this in them, and I don't think a lot of people did. And it's kind of miraculous, especially since not even just completely divorcing it from the argument of should Sony keep the rights to Spider-Man, Sony Pictures Animation has not had a good track record.
They made the Emoji Movie before this one.
Like, hang on, because I've been eternally fascinated by the sort of output from Sony Animation, because their very first movie, like back in 2006, was Open Season, which I think holds up and which I think is a really charming little buddy comedy animated movie. Then after that, they did Surf's Up and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, both of which are movies I really, really like. And then almost immediately afterward, they take a significant nosedive. And like they do stuff like the Smurfs and Hotel Transylvania, which I enjoy the first one, but I really do not care for the second and third one. Goosebumps, which I haven't seen. Peter Rabbit, which I heard lots of iffy things about. And then the Emoji Movie. And it's like, did the people who made the really, really good ones just take a break for a decade and then decide to come back for this?
Well, I'm pretty sure Lord and Miller did do Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Yeah, they were attached to that one. So they were off doing other things for other animation companies.
Yeah, they did Lego Batman, too.
And the first Lego movie, which the first Lego movie is probably the closest any other movie in existence, I think, comes to feeling like this one.
I feel like I saw a quote that said this movie is to Spider-Man what Lego Batman is to Batman, in the sense that, like, it's an utter celebration of the character and the like side characters and stuff.
It is a celebration of that franchise, yeah.
But it is not afraid to like poke fun at the like product placement that comes with all of it.
Yeah, it's even celebratory of the kind of like consumerist stuff.
As you can see in Stan's cameo, which I did cry at.
Yeah.
I had to hold my breath at that one. That was the hardest scene to get through the movie, including Uncle Aaron's death. Stan's cameo caught me.
I don't know. I never had that quite emotional reaction to it, just because of the way people talked about it. I knew something was coming, and I knew it was gonna be like a big tearjerker. But I don't know. Like I appreciate that cameo, it doesn't quite hit me the way it hits everyone else.
I think it hit me because I know that, like, it's got that line where it's like we were friends, he and I, and like knowing that, because Stan's last words, I don't know if you guys know what they were, but he was talking to his protege Roy, who was about to take over Marvel Comics, and his last words were, "Take care of my boy, Roy."
Oh, come on!
Yeah, and that was why it got to me, because Spider-Man was very much his son. He referred to him as his son.
I didn't even
And so his last words were, "Take care of my boy." And like, I think especially seeing like all the fan art people are making of like their own Spider-Sonas, and knowing now that they can be Spider-Man just as much as Peter Parker or Miles Morales can be, like, just to think like Stan would love that, because that's what he invented it for. And it was that feeling and the quote at the end and knowing that really made it a tearjerker more than just seeing Stan Lee again. Yeah.
Great, thanks. You gave me feelings.
Yeah, one of the biggest regrets of my entire life will be that I never had the opportunity to meet the man.
Yeah, we went to the Comic-Con he was at and like missed him, and it was a sad experience for me.
Because that, like, again, I know this sounds so sappy, maybe even hyperbolic, but he kind of like helped to shape who I am. Like,
that sound hyperbolic to me, because I would say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is gonna shape people. Like, that's, again, like, this is, I think, an argument for these characters, these brands, these properties as legitimate art that will affect people and shape how they grow up, and that's what they've always been. But I think especially on the big screen, they've needed sort of to be qualified for people who can't see them that way. And then I think all of that feeling and all of that sense of these characters and these stories is things that will shape people and the kind of people that we will grow up to be in, like, future generations. I think that's here in this movie.
absolutely. I'm so glad that Angelics, the kids, get to grow up with this film. Like, I am not who I am without that first Raimi film.
Yeah.
And
I am without the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I wouldn't know maybe 3/4 of the people I know.
Ditto.
same, just the circles that we travel in, and like the fellow fans that we meet. It's a great time to be a fan of Marvel and of comics and of just these great, like, mythological characters that are just relatable and like role models and like worth emulating, and it's so damn great.
Yeah.
And just to know, like Latin American kids now who have their own, they have a character who's fluent in Spanish.
It's the Spider-Man.
It's in Spider-Man.
I did also really appreciate the bold choice of not putting subtitles with the Spanish.
They put exactly one where Scorpion comes in.
And it's great because they have the little thing.
They have the little thing that says translated.
Yeah,
from
like in
Spanish.
comics, it's like the asterisk translated from Spanish. But yeah, okay, so like I have only one other thing that I want to talk about with this movie, which is the scene. It's the dang it, what's the song called? The
What's Up, Danger?
Yeah,
where it takes the leap of faith.
The leap of faith.
The leap of faith shot is one of the best shots I've ever seen, and Nick and I were talking about it. Like, that entire sequence is right up there with the ending of Speed Racer, which is my favorite movie of all time, and I've watched it 14 times and cried every single one. And the shot in Avengers, in the first Avengers, with the round shot where the theme like fully plays for the first.
Oh, I agree with you. It's on that level.
It is right up there.
Yeah.
In terms of just pure raw emotion.
And so, like, because I know a lot of people who either haven't watched Speed Racer or don't know what we're talking about, there is like the climactic race in 2008 movie Speed Racer
which is a great anime adaptation and is the best live action anime adaptation ever.
To quote, like, to borrow a phrase from Film Crit Hulk, is like that sequence is just a moment of pure transcendence, and that's like the kind of moment that I watch movies for, where it's like I'm not sitting in a theater anymore. I'm like having an emotional experience, and that only happens with a handful of movies, like a couple of other Marvel movies, Speed Racer, some other stuff that I could think of, I'm sure. But then it happens in this movie with that scene, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm Miles in that scene. It's just like, this is the culmination of all this stuff. And it's just this moment of pure freedom, and like, I've got it now. It's like, oh, I knew this movie was something special, like, from the word go, but that's really where I'm like, oh, this is gonna be, like, talked about for years and years and years. This movie is like a legit masterpiece.
This movie is so good, it makes me like embarrassed that I am not good enough to make something like it.
There's two things about the scene I want to mention. One is I wish they hadn't put out that whole scene a week before the movie came out.
I was not aware that they did that.
Was it before? I thought it was like immediately afterward.
No, they put out that scene a full week before the movie came out. I remember it very vividly because I'm such a nerd and I'll eat up anything that they give me media wise, so I couldn't help but look at it over and over again.
Go into the movie blind, so I just
I already saw that scene like 4 times over before I even saw the movie. But even still, seeing it in context of the movie, it's so incredible. And I love how the scene is structured, because like we see Miles like already like sitting on top of the roof, and it keeps cutting back and forth from him leaving his dormitory to getting to Aunt May's house, finding the suit in Aunt May, spray painting it, and we hear the voiceover that he's from people that he's gotten throughout the movie, and then we finally get to the present and he jumps. That's a very comic book thing, and I love that.
Yeah, and I take license if you notice with the narration, because in the scene with Peter, he's like, "When do I know I'm ready?" And Peter's like, "You won't. It's a leap of faith." And then when he jumps off, he's like, "When do I know I'm Spider-Man?" It's like, "You won't. It's a leap of faith." It's like they very particularly changed that word, and it's so great. It's so great.
That's one, I love that he spray paints the suit, because I remember him going down into the like shack where the spider cave, I suppose, where he keeps all the suits, and I'm like, well, okay, I know he's gonna get his suit from here, just where? Because I don't see it. I see like and the ecto suit. He makes it himself, like using the artistic like abilities that he has. I like that the like spider isn't symmetrical. Yeah. It's like very slightly asymmetrical. I love that when he first goes to the suit, when they first go in like Spider Cave, he only goes up to the chest, but then when he's doing that, he's face to face with it.
That's one of my favorite like little callback parallels that they do, and it's so subtle, is like the very first time he goes up to that suit and his face is reflected in the glass, he only kind of comes up to its shoulder, and then in the climactic scene he goes up to it and he's like face to face with it. It's like, all right, now it's on. He's ready to put it on. It's great.
And
I don't know, like
I had another point about that scene though. Right. Okay. I love the sound and the like flapping of his clothing.
Yep.
Because you can tell just how fast he's falling. Like, clothes don't flap that hard unless you're really high and really fast.
It's just that whole sequence alone is like worth the price of admission.
And I love when they're swinging through the like woods away from the facility, and Peter's like, the best way to learn is through like life-threatening circumstances, and that's why
terrible life-threatening pressure.
Yeah, and that's why he can't do it when he jumps from like the shorter building, And so when he does it from like the super high building during that scene, that's when it activates.
And when he falls and goes
And then he goes up and he goes woo.
It's like the ahs, like it's a comedic beat, and then we go back to it. It's like, nope, this is pure triumph. I could gush about this movie until I die. I don't know. I think it's the closest thing I've seen in a long time to a perfect movie.
When little,
yeah, I really appreciated like just how close Peter was, and like being a co-protagonist with Miles as well. I thought that was really great. The scene with him teaching how to swim in the forest is so good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to put on a show of being like all the grumpy mentor, but as soon as they really get into it, like he's so encouraging.
Yeah, especially when he's like, in the line of business, most people I meet try to kill me. You're a nice change of pace. And oh my God, there's so many small details.
But there's a great line. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Edie.
I was just gonna say the post credits with Miguel and 2099 and the meme of the pointing, and J. Jonah Jameson and that police officer are both Stan's voice again. Okay, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say that Peter has yet again one of the funniest lines in the movie, where Miles shows up towards the end to help them, and he said, "Oh my God, you're doing it on command! I'm so proud of you. Do I want kids?"
I love you. I'm so proud of you. Do I want kids? Spider-Ham, just his entire existence is amazing. Like with the anvil dropping on Scorpion.
And then when the portal closes.
That's all, folks.
Yeah.
Can you legally say that?
And then when all the metal gets like sucked into the portal and it closes, and then the last thing that comes in is the anvil again.
And all the R-rated jokes that John Mulaney was gonna do, where he kept putting F-bombs in like all of the lines, and it fits too perfectly.
Someone made a little fan comic where like Tam ends up in Noir's dimension, and Noir says like "damn," and he's like, "Wait a minute, you can curse here?" He's like, "Yeah, but you see, he just says the F word like really loud."
The so-so popsicle. I'm just looking at my list right now.
I don't know, like we've gone on for a while. I feel like I'm kind of tapped out for the moment as far as gushing about this movie goes.
Hold up.
If you guys want to do final thoughts, or if Eden, you want to hit any like
I'm just gonna
little miscellaneous
things. Hypnotize. Just open. Let me just say, this movie, I think I came out of it and I said, this is such a Brooklyn movie, it might as well be a Spike Lee joint. Like, we're from Brooklyn, and I've never encountered a movie that just makes me feel like Brooklyn to the extent that this one does. Like when he's walking by and he's playing basketball, and when he's talking to all his friends going to school, and when his dad is talking about the coffee place, and I'm like, oh, not to gentrification. And how many coffee places just keep popping up? And like once again being bilingual, and the graffiti on the trains, and this movie, even without the little text boxes, it looks like a comic book. And the way Miles sings in his headphones, the fact that Chance the Rapper is exactly the same except there's a 4 on his hat. Spidey is or SPDR being under the table, the restaurant table. So I assume Ham is like under the platter then, because he's not there either.
May or may not be in the lead scenes.
The Black Sheep remix, just the entire soundtrack.
Okay, I think we're good.
Wait, I did bring up a point earlier though. that I didn't really get to expand on, and it's that I relate to Miles more than any other character ever. And it's not just the Afro Latino thing, it's the fact that, like, not only is he so ensconced in Brooklynness, like, what universe are you from? Brooklyn. But, like, the way he operates at his school and the
So
way
you've also tried the shoulder touch?
I have not tried the shoulder touch. I will do that eventually to someone. But I don't know, the running from the lockers, the fact that I go to a pretty elite Brooklyn school where we all wear the same uniform and it sucks. Um, and then especially
the way that all of his professors' dialogue is like emphasizing like the pressure. The conclusion is stress. They're gonna write about great expectations.
Great Expectations, where a boy meets the freaking finds a body in a graveyard. And
Yeah. Did you know about that, Malik? Like the deliberate choice of the book Great Expectations, because that's also a book about a kid meeting a hobo in a graveyard. And, like,
I did know about that, yeah.
It was great.
But like also just an accurate depiction of sensory overload, which I have been through before, both at school and outside of it. And like,
so true.
Obviously it's because like he's got super senses now and he's not used to it, but still, I am so glad Miles Morales exists, and I'm so glad this movie exists. And okay, yeah.
I want to do my own little like wrap up, quick thoughts. I didn't talk too much about Kingpin. I want to just say that I do really appreciate him as a villain. I think his motivations are pretty simple, but ultimately pretty sympathetic. And I do like that he's a significantly different take than what we've seen from Kingpin before. And one of the things I appreciate most about this movie is that as much comedy is in it, because there is a lot of comedy, I wouldn't call it a comedy. This movie lets itself get like really serious at points, and I really like that. That you can have like all these jokes and all these great funny moments and one-liners in the same movie where Kingpin kills Spider-Man with his bare hands, and we have these really intense, damn near scary scenes with Prowler chasing Miles.
Yeah. I wouldn't identify this way that you could do with pretty much anything else that Lord and Miller have worked on. It's just funny in the way that you would expect from a Spider-Man story.
And like I think this is that perfect balance that some of the MCU movies don't quite strike, and that, you know, a lot of people complain that they are too jovial and the movie just kind of constantly asks you to laugh. But with this, I don't have that. There is no, you know, Doctor Strange's cape just tickling him in the face for no reason.
Well, I mean, we can talk at some other time, but like,
what's that tickling? I thought he was wiping his tears.
Yeah, the cape was just wiping his tears, but people have issues with that scene. But like, I understand totally what you're saying, and I agree that it depends on how much it lands or doesn't land for you with the MCU movies. For me, it almost always lands, but even that being the case, it's easy to see that there is sort of a sense of they're very, very conscious about like keeping the tone light enough that, you know, people remain entertained constantly. And obviously, Lord and Miller and everyone else who worked on this movie are conscious of that as well. But they have just like such a mastery of tone where it's just like the moments that are, again, it all comes down to the screenplay and how smart it is and how seamless the pacing is, where it doesn't feel like funny moments and dramatic moments. It feels like one very long, natural moment on top of each other. And, you know, they play out naturally as they would. And the audience will laugh at some of it, and they'll be scared at some of it. and that's just kind of the experience.
Yeah, it feels natural. It doesn't feel like the movie is just asking me to laugh.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
not going out of
naturally funny moments that come out of the story.
Yeah, it's not going out of its way to have a funny scene, which is what some MCU movies will do.
While we're on that subject, I do think another one of the funniest bits in the entire movie, especially like, people who are familiar with Spider-Man, is they make such a big deal out of the scene where the spider bites Miles and then he just smacks it and dies.
Yeah, just completely unfazed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm
Wanda.
I just
Wakandan Embassy building, which the shot of that.
Yeah, this movie is amazing.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it already, and for some bizarre, I can't understand reason, decided to listen to this, it's your own fault. Go out and see it. I don't know what's wrong with you. More people need to see this movie. It deserves your cash dollars.